Happy New Year everybody and welcome back to my channel. As promised, today I'm going to be talking about how you can prepare for the multi-state performance test, also known as the MPT, and how you can use it to succeed on your bars. A lot of people completely ignore this area of the bar exam when they're preparing. Don't be that person. For me, the MPT made the difference between passing and failing the first time I took the bar exam, and that's why this is so important to me. I think I practiced about 13 of them the first time I took the exam, and I thought I was pretty prepared. But I had no idea how under-prepared I was for the MPT until I went into the bar exam in July 2018, and I panicked. It was really bad. I completely froze up. I couldn't read, I couldn't think straight, I couldn't write, and not only did I screw up my MPT, I was so upset and mad at myself that I completely screwed up the rest of the morning essays too. And when results came out, the scores that I had gotten on my MPT and those morning essays were low enough that I didn't pass that time. Let me tell you, you do not want that to happen to you when your scores in the afternoon and the next day are perfectly fine to get you over the passing mark, but you let fear get in the way. Not cool. It was the worst. But that's another reason why I'm so serious about the MPT and why I want to help you guys if this is something that you struggle with or you're afraid of. Once I got my scores back the first time, I knew that I had to really focus on the MPT, because not only did I know I was going to have to do it again, I was going to have to do it twice the second time, because the jurisdiction that I had tested in, when I tested the first time, it was state specific, and then the second time I joined the uniform bar exam, and the uniform bar exam has 2 MPTs. So that was terrifying. But I was really determined to make sure that I was going to succeed on my second bar exam overall, but specifically on the MPTs. But getting there was not easy. In all fairness, a lot of people pick up the MPT pretty easily. I mean, they practice a couple times and they get it and it's fine. But a lot of people don't, and don't let anybody judge you or tell you that you're practicing too much and not focusing on what you need to do if you're practicing the MPT more than a few times. In fact, you're being very smart. For me, it took months and months of almost daily practice, which I'll get into that a little more later in the video, but yeah, almost daily. For me, it was one of those things that I knew I was perfectly capable of writing a brief. You know, I took appellate advocacy, I took my LARW class, I took advanced LARW, I knew I could do it. It's just a matter of the perfectionism and the time pressure. And ultimately, that's why I had to use these 10 things to overcome my fear of the MPT and use it to ultimately succeed on my bar exam. Tip number 1, let go of perfectionism. Simple as that. It's really hard to do, but as my professor was telling me, you literally just have to get the product written. My goal going into this second bar exam was literally just to put in 2 decent work products that looked like what the task memo was asking me, and that's what I did. My second tip is start small and start early. And what I mean by that is start in increments if you have to. You can get the product written, but the time freaks you out or the perfectionism gets to you, break it down. So what I did to start off with is I would, instead of telling myself, okay, you have to practice 2 MPTs today, I started off saying, okay, you have 5 minutes to practice the MPT today. Basically what I would do is I'd just take the task memo, I'd read through it, and then I'd make notes about what I needed to look for in the library, what I needed to write in my headings, and just like get myself situated, honestly, in the task. That would get me prepared to think about what it would look like then to start writing the exam once I was actually in it. Practicing that over and over again just with the task memo really helped break a tiny crack in my fear of the MPT, and I started to get used to what the task memo said. I started to see the patterns, which I totally did not believe people when they said there were patterns to these things, but there are, and I started to see them, and that just really helped me. And so once I got used to that, I would increase it a little bit, like I'd add 10 minutes and I'd say, okay, today I'm gonna look at the task memo and I'm gonna skim through the documents and just get used to doing all of that in a 15-minute period and use that to then move on to doing like a 25-minute block of time or a 45-minute block of time where you just go through all the documents and plan your document. Ultimately, I worked my way up to doing obviously the hour-and-a-half MPT and then even more so the 3-hour block of 2 MPTs. So I just started small and got myself used to it. You should go into the bar exam knowing exactly how you'll format anything you're asked to do and start thinking about any kind of wildcards too. Companies should have that in your book, and there are websites if you can't find it. But definitely have a format in mind for every task. I mean, really, it's just like any essay topic or MBE question. Like, you need to know what the commonly tested MPT format should look like so you can at least make your document look like that. Then, as I said before, practice 5 times a week at least. This is the only way that I got myself beyond panicking the second time like I did the first time, because I knew that I had practiced so much for the MPT. So even when I started to get scared in the second exam, I was like, no, you have done this for weeks, every single day. I mean, I did it Mondays, Tuesdays, then Thursday through Saturday. You really want to go into the exam with the confidence that you've been doing this for months and you can do it in the exam. And that's what got me through the MPT the second time. I was actually so confident that even though I was terrified, like, I knew I could do it. And that's why I actually kind of enjoyed the MPT the second time. I mean, it helped that the subject matter that I got was something that was interesting to me, but I was so used to doing the MPT every day that it was just kind of like, okay, well, now it's time to do my MPTs for the day, and it wasn't as terrifying the second time. So if you're someone that's afraid of the MPT, practice every day. Next thing, I used every MPT at least once, and most of them I used 2 or 3 times. The last month before the exam, so all of February, I practiced at least 1 full MPT a day, and usually did 2 a day, just because that was the most important thing to me, was to succeed on the MPT. So that's what I did. I did the full timed exams multiple times so that I could be used to it. And the other thing with that, I practiced them in different combinations of the exams at random. So what I literally did was I went through my list of every MPT I had available in my books and online, and there are free MPTs online, so be sure to Google those, and they're different from what your book gives you usually. But I had a list, and what I would do is I just pick at random whatever 2 MPTs I was going to do, and I do them in combination. So that meant if I picked 2 briefs, I had to do 2 briefs in that 3-hour period. If I picked a will and an opinion letter, that's what I did. That really got me used to not knowing what to expect and doing these documents in different combinations so that I could be as prepared as possible for the exam. Do timed exams from the beginning. Even if that means that you're cutting it into small chunks like I told you earlier, still time that 5 minutes and say, I'm only spending 5 minutes on this task memo, or say, I'm gonna time myself for 5 minutes and do as much as I can in that 5 minutes. But you want to be timing yourself from the very beginning, because the time pressure is what gets people. Have a system that you created. I mean, it's nice and all that other people have their own systems, but if it doesn't work for you in practice, it's definitely not going to work on the exam. So if you don't have a system that is unique to you and still gets you to what the task memo is asking you to do, it's not going to work. This is why practice is so crucial, because you need to figure out how much time you need to read the task memo, whether you want to read the library first or the file, whether you want to start writing out of format real fast before you start reading. You need to know those things before you go into the exam. And my system was like, when I would open up, the first thing that I would do is look at the table of contents, and there were 5 things that I wrote down, and oh, it's coming back to me. I would write down how many cases and statutes there were, and how many documents in the file there were. I would write down who it looked like the parties were, what the task I thought I was gonna have to write was, and something else. I don't know, but there were 5 things that no matter what MPT I read, I would write those things down so I could start to immerse myself. And then when I went into the task memo and I saw some of the pieces fitting together, it made a lot more sense. And because I had already thought about it for a quick minute, did not spend more than a minute on that, but just to like get myself thinking, that really helped instead of like panicking. Because for me, when I looked at the task memo and I would start to try to read it, my brain would start freaking out. But once I figured out that system and like thinking about the table of contents first, it helped my brain not panic. Find what works for you overall. Having a system that works for you is different from writing in an acceptable format. The system is how you approach the exam. The format is obviously what they're asking you to do. Your system is unique to you and how you get to that appropriate format. Make sure that you have about 5 minutes to review the work product before time is called. For me, that last 5 minutes, I literally just spent looking over what I had written and making sure that it looked decent. It was a time that I would also look at my headings, make sure that I was citing cases, any like awkward sentences that weren't finished were taken out. Make sure that it looks good so that if the grader is just skimming through it, they will see that you have all the necessary parts in it, and then if they read it thoroughly, it still makes sense. Tip number 9 is a tip that I actually got from someone else on YouTube, and I don't remember her name and I feel really bad. She was not talking about the MPT, she was talking about the California performance test, but I took this tip and it's just an extra special touch, but it is always to add a closing signature. Unless you're told not to, I don't think I've ever seen a task memo say don't add a signature, but I think that it just adds that extra special professional touch to your document. What I would write at the end was respectfully submitted, applicant or examinee. And with that, I would always refer to myself as the task memo referred to you. So like, instead of saying like you're always going to use the word applicant, make sure that you're referring to yourself as the task memo refers to you. So if it's a memo that says to examinee, you are referring to yourself by what they say you are. It just shows that you're paying attention to that small detail, and that goes along. I already talked about this, but at the end, make sure you look over it, just scan through it, make sure that the headings make sense, make sure that it looks like the document you are asked to draft, and make sure that if your headings are all that the grader reads, that it makes your argument. Don't try to go through and change everything at the last minute, but if there's like a word you could add in there or just like a little phrase you could rewrite to make it more persuasive or objective or whatever you need to do, do it so that it looks good. And guys, honestly, those are my top 10 tips. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'm gonna put together a public playlist of MPT advice videos I found the most helpful, and I'll leave that in the description below, or I'll add it to like the info card. I hope that that can help you and you can find good advice in addition to this video. Last bonus tip, no matter how it feels, keep practicing. Do not give up until the exam is over. Even if you are in the middle of the exam and you feel like you're failing, keep going, because you're probably doing better than you think you are unless you're not writing anything at all. If you do what I told you in this video, you are that much closer to succeeding on the MPT and ultimately passing your bar exam. I just want to say thank you for watching. I appreciate you and I believe in you. You got this. I'll talk to you guys next time with either my MBE or MEE exam advice video. All right.